9:30. The earliest we've ever done. What's that?
They wanted to make a post.
What do you think?
Yeah, that would be late. And we do punch. Just by then punch.
I think they wanted all the services, I'm guessing, to start at the same time. So that way, if your roommate's going to keep the chapel right here, you know, there's no, everyone has to, you know, fight over the shower. That's right. Yeah, you know, you have to be indoors by 11.
That's right, yeah.
Come here.
Sorry, I didn't get to say
I
hello
know.
last night.
Well, it's a fun thing. Then we literally go to the temple. So that's a lot. Do I know you? No. Okay, good. Got it. You never know. But how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you? Okay.
That's awesome. And your sister, what's her name? Nice. How did you like it? You went to Weber too, right?
I did.
Yeah, I feel like you weren't like really crazy, rude, over shit that you had.
I didn't say much on that.
Yeah. And are you good? Yeah. How do you like it? Yeah, right. I mean, when do you start? Yeah. You didn't want to go home and hang with the fam. You did that. You know, or, yeah, as you should. Yeah, it's never the same thing twice. So. Yeah, I've known him since he was a little lad.
Yeah.
Always a sweetheart. Yeah, I'm so happy you're at Tech and doing that thing. There are folks from close there, right?
Yeah.
Do people see each other ever?
There's 4 of us from my grade. There's a few more from my grade Davis.
Yeah.
Deaconess and Hospital.
Nice.
Z, Billy.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Where are you from? Okay, nice. And you're at Tech as well? How's your, and you're just starting?
Yeah, certainly.
How's it going?
It's been okay.
What do you think of the South?
I don't like the weather.
Yeah, it's been a little warm. Yeah, I get it. Where in Maryland are you from?
You know, like Petersburg, Rockford area?
Like Baltimore, sort of outside Baltimore. So
I'm like
Baltimore,
kind of
DC.
close to GCC.
Oh, got some family in that area. Nice. Welcome. It's good to see you. So, we both get credit for this. So, I'm happy. Yeah, so like you look the same. A little more svelte. Let's put it that way. Let's see what's going on in the lobby. Five in the morning, this awkward period of waiting and semi-silence. 5 more minutes. Our song leader has been spoken.
Really? Yeah.
So strange.
Oh.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Shana Tova. I'm so glad that we could be here together. Did you get rained on today? Yes or no? No. Some did, some didn't. It's very Atlanta. And hopefully everyone is doing well. For the rest of the world, it's what, Tuesday morning? The Tuesday after Labor Day. A miserable and depressing time for us. It's Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. So I think we're the big winners today, right? Yes. It's something that I love, when driving around town on the high holy days, knowing, well, I'm headed to Emory, to Marcus Hillels Center, and we're going to be celebrating Rosh Hashanah, and that poor guy is going to.
You're also technically going to work.
This is true. We are working. We're all doing work here. It's just a different kind of work. Why don't we sing an opening song, Hannah? Your choice. And we'll do some introductions. We're going to ease into things. We're only going to be here for 7 or 8 hours, so that's fun. And what are we going to sing to begin?
We're going to be opening with a nice little Hine Bateau.
Awesome. So with our masks, with our various melodies and levels of familiarity, we try to find some common ground. I'm going to assume that everyone here is participating this morning. Whether you do so in the form of singing or sleeping really is up to you, but I know that all options are available to us this morning. One more song, prayer, Modani, I think, to continue sort of getting in the spirit of Rosh Hashanah. Is that on your list?
I have a Mato Brew on my list.
You have a Matzah Brew. Awesome. You have our outline, or
Oh, I
share
actually
this?
don't have an outline. You might want to share, but
No,
I
let's just
think
wing
I
it.
know
Let's
pretty
wing
well.
it.
Okay.
So we are going to turn then to page 110 for Mato Brew. It's great. Got it. Okay, we all just got 2 minutes of our lunch time. Yeah. Good morning again, Shana Tova. You're going to pick your greeting, right? That's one of the wonderful things about Rosh Hashanah. Happy Tuesday. So many different ways that we can greet one another. We'll do some introductions.
Yeah, so hi everybody, my name is Hannah. I use she, they pronouns. I'm currently a senior at Emory studying statistics and women and gender studies. I am the vice president of Emory Hillel this year, and I also lead our Reform tequilas on Friday night. So as I said last night, this can also serve as a shameless plug for Hillel Friday night dinner and services. Everyone is welcome to come anytime, but it's lovely to be back with you all here today.
It's not shameless when you're inviting people to come and be a part of the community. That's a wonderful thing. So we appreciate that reminder, and I definitely encourage that. My name is Micah Lapidus. I am a rabbi. I spend most of my time at the Davis Academy, which is a Jewish K-8 school up in Sandy Springs. I'm so happy to see alumni. I will not make you come up and help me in the service, though I know that you could. And I'm just grateful that we're all here today. We are an intimate crowd, but really, we've made a choice, a conscious choice to be here this morning, and so I really push that back on all of us. We'll go through our prayers, we'll have our Torah service, we'll hear a little bit the sound of the shofar modified in light of COVID, but sort of what happens here is really up to each and every one of us. And I would not presume to know necessarily what's in anyone's hearts and minds, what you're bringing with you here today. I wouldn't presume to identify what work it is that you want to participate in this morning, and so I just invite you to create whatever space you need in order to make that happen. I was rotting my brain cells in the dung heap of social media the other day. I'm sure I'm the only one who's ever done that, yes. And came upon something which said, this feller, for those that care, said, what's your favorite Rosh Hashanah symbol or tradition? Fake answers only. So I thought, okay, this could be a useful way to spend 30 seconds. There were a number of comments. I clicked on the comments. The first comment was, I love the sound of the shofar. Obviously, that person had not read the prompt because that was not me. But, it sort of went on from there. I love making haroset. I love saying the 4 questions. I mean, what are the 4 questions of Rosh Hashanah? And then it went on from there. I love confessing to the priest, taking the communion, going to Mecca to do the Hajj. I mean, it was on and on. And on, and my takeaway from that is that there's a fair amount of confusion. What are we doing here? Why are we here? We're all here, but if I would really sit you down, look deeply into your eyes, the window to your soul, and say, why are you here? What would be the quality of our response? I promise that I won't do that if someone were to ask me, why am I here? So it behooves us to just take a moment to really kind of sort through that confusion and try to achieve some measure of clarity about our motives. What brought us here this morning? Is it a sense of guilt? Is it a sense of responsibility? Is it a sense of desire to be a part of the community? What brought us here? Is some class giving us extra credit for attending? I mean, really, what is going on? Why are we here? This is a strange thing to be doing on a Tuesday morning while the rest of the world is conducting its business. So we're here because we want to celebrate the birthday of the world, which is one of the things that Rosh Hashanah symbolizes. Are we here because we want to hear the sound of the Torah? I mean, really, why are we here? And I think there's a possible answer in the last verse of Matovu, which we did not sing. It's there on page 110. It says, "V'ani tefilati lecha," says, I pray to you, God. Some of us were here last night. We heard David Portnoy share some reflections on what prayer means to him. I'm not going to try to rehash everything that he said. He said it very articulately, as members of the Emory and Hillels of Georgia community often do. But he was really sharing that he's put a lot of time into what does prayer mean to him. And so there are 2 ways to read this line, but I need to feel it. One is I pray to you, God, which is sort of the plain sense meaning. But if you play around with the Hebrew, and I know that my good friend and colleague Rabbi Bronig over here knows this as well, you can also read this as saying, but I need to feel it. I am my prayer, which is slightly different than I pray to you, God. But I need to feel it. I am my prayer. And so really, I think part of why I'm here, I hope, is to get in touch with the real me, which is not the me that I spend probably most of my waking hours kind of slugging around the universe thinking about. That there's something else that's a part of me, or of which I'm a part, that I often neglect. I don't really attend to very often. Maybe I'm afraid of it. Maybe I'm confused by it. There's some bigger or smaller version of me that sometimes feels more real. And so maybe on Rosh Hashanah or just through Jewish prayer and Jewish experiences more generally, I'm coming to connect to that. I don't know what that being's pronouns are. I don't think it really matters. I just know that there's some other version of me that I think gives me some context, gives me some perspective, maybe in better moments of my life is whispering in my ear, reminding me of certain things. And so I think I'm here to spend some time trying to interact with that person and with all of you, right? It's not a completely self-reflective or narcissistic exercise, but why are we here? Why are we here? If you don't know the answer, or if you have multiple answers, just an opportunity to really lean into that question, and maybe by the end, there will be some surprise. Oh, I didn't realize that I was here for that. Or I didn't realize that by being here, I would experience or have an opportunity to consider that other thing. So an invitation, hopefully an open invitation to find and create meaning individually and in the context of this community, which is never the same twice. So if you're new here, welcome, you're not alone. If you're old here, welcome, you're not alone. And we will do what it is that we do together, and that's happening in various iterations and forms across campus and really around the world this week. And I think we'll do a Sherry Yatzar, a prayer for our bodies. Some of these words can be found on page 120. The English words, no. Okay.
I'm going to start out with some woes.
The way I am, and a little broken too.
I'm perfect the way I am, a little broken too.
I will live each day as a gift for you.
I will live each day as gifts I give to you. Back to the woes.
God for our bodies, which I'm assuming we all have complex and interesting relationships. I do. And we thank God simultaneously for our souls, and I think the same applies there.
So this one also has a little bit of English, but I'll give it to you ahead of time. The English part says, you created me, you shaped me, you breathed me into life. So a little bit of Hebrew and then a little bit of English. Elohai, Neshama, Shenatatavi, Shenatatavi, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatatavi, Shenatatavi,
Music really sets the mood, so thank you, Hannah, and thank you everyone for embracing the opportunity to sing a little bit together. We're going to transition now from this sort of warm-up, this kind of becoming mindful, becoming aware, being curious about our experience. Of course, those things we've planted those seeds, and we extend them throughout our time together, and ideally throughout our lives, right? It's mindfulness, it's curiosity. But we'll transition now to the series of prayers that surround the Shema, obviously an important part of our liturgy. We'll embrace some of that special melody that's associated with the High Holy Days, the High Holy Day New Self. Before we do that, I just want to invite us all to think about someone who's not physically in this room with us, but who, if they walked into this room right now, we'd be happy to see them. Maybe we'd even want to see them. And you know what? Maybe if we were to kind of have an opportunity to invite someone to be in this room with us, think about who that person or who those people might be. It can be people that we know. They can be family members. They can be people who are living, people who are no longer here in body but are here in spirit. Just take a moment and think about who you wish was maybe sitting beside you, and in a moment who you wish was standing beside you. So one of the great, I think, mysteries of life is that by summoning that person's image, by thinking about the way that person or those people make us feel, by whatever it is that just happened, hopefully for some of us, if it happened, we're actually able in some, I think, very real way to have them with us. So we're going to say Baruch Hu, we're going to say the Shema, and so on and so forth. And I invite you to just take a moment and really try to feel the presence of that person. If you struggle with that, if that feels strange to you, then take a moment and feel the presence of the people who are here physically in the room, recognizing that we're in this together. And if that's difficult for you as well, then just take a moment and really try to become aware of your own thoughts, feelings, sensations, and emotions as we make our way through this part of the liturgy. We will continue on page 142. And Hannah, we're going to do some of the High Holiday and New Self here. So, let's turn to page 142. Let us rise together. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam V'amen. Yotzer, or creator of light. I don't know if you had a chance when you were coming in to meet one of the young Israelis who's here serving the Emory and the Hillels community. One of them happens to be named Or. So Or means light. Here's a person who walks around the world saying, hello, my name is Light, nice to meet you. I'm Light, nice to meet you. I'm Light, nice to meet you. What a spiritual practice that could be if we walked around this world maybe sharing not only the name that we were given, but maybe some of the other true names by which we might refer to ourselves. Let's just take a moment, turn to page 150, where we find the words of the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Yevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. You can be seated, page 152. Asher Anochi Metzavecha Hayom Alevanecha Veshinantam Lemonecha Veivartam Veshitecha V'Veitecha U'Belechtecha V'Derech U'Shokvecha U'V'Kumecha U'Shartam Le'ot Al Yadecha V'Hayiletotavot V'Einecha U'Tavtam Al Beitecha U'Visharecha Leman Tizkeru V'Asitem Es Kol Mitzvotai V'Yitem Kedoshim Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher Hotzeiti Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim V'Yot Lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem. Amen. Page 164. Michamocha ba'ezim Adonai, Michamocha nedar ba'kodesh, Norah tehilot osei felech, Shira chadasha, Shibechu gemulim, Leshimcha svatayam, Yachad kulam. Hodu b'him lechu ve'amaru, Adonai yimcha le'olam va'ed. Turn to page 166. We'll just pause for a moment, catch our breaths as we get ready to enter into the Amidah, which is the series of prayers that looks a little bit different on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's raining outside. What a beautiful blessing, especially since we are inside. Now I know why the service started a half hour early. Otherwise, none of us would be here. Series of prayers that looks a little, has some similarities and differences. So what's happening in the Amidah? When Hannah leads us in song, we're asking God to help give us the words that we are looking for. That's the first thing. So this sort of acknowledgement simultaneously of our capacity and of our limitation. And that's really a balance that we play with throughout these series of prayers and in life in general. Almost like the song, I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. The Avot and Imahot, I think, is a wonderful place to start the series of prayers, taking a step backwards before we take a step forward, thinking about the generations that came before, thinking about the legacy that they've left us, thinking about the nachas. You guys know what nachas is? We still know the joy that they would have in knowing that we are here now. They'd be incredibly confused by the fact that we're wearing our yarmulkes on our faces. But other than that, they would probably be very happy that we were here. The fact that we're part of this chain of tradition that goes back further than any of us can really fathom, to a point where we are all connected. We're all connected now, but if you chase that chain of tradition back, regardless of what faith or nationality or origin you are, we're all connected. Then the next prayer that Giver wrote, just thinking about the fact that we live in a pretty miraculous universe where people who are sick, sometimes, God willing, are restored to health. People who are bent over are able to become upright again, both physically and spiritually. And in the Jewish imagination, it's really God that is the possibility of that happening. And God has deputized, so many of us to participate in that kind of possibility of positive transformation. And then into a prayer called Kedusha, which is about holiness. I think an overlooked concept in the world today. Hey, there are things in this life that are truly sacred. And they're not necessarily in there. A lot of them are in here. A lot of them are in here. These aren't things that you have to go on top of a mountain or, take the monastic vows for, right? Friendship, love, community, breathing, health, laughter. These sorts of things are holy. These sorts of things are sacred. And we're just given an opportunity to play with all of these themes. So, of course, people are overwhelmed by the high holy days. Of course, people are overwhelmed. If we take this text seriously, if we interact with it, the amount of things that we're being invited to consider in any moment are pretty extraordinary. And again, so different from those who, I presume, but from those who are participating in sort of Tuesday morning as usual. So lots going on here, and lots of opportunities, as well as a famous passage of the High Holiday literature, the Book of Life, and who shall live and who shall die, and the either overly simplistic or the incredibly complicated theology that abides and resides in that prayer. So page 166, we'll be standing for some of this, not all of this, but we'll start standing now, and hopefully having this people who are not here physically but are here for us in other ways, standing by our side.
Adonai, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, 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 Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. El Haggadol, Hagibor, Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Zomim, Lefanei Hakol, V'zocher Chasei Avot Imavot, Ve'vihilah V'nebneihem, L'man Shemu Yahweh.
Quoted passage,
Zohoreinu Lechaim, Lechatex B'Chaim, V'chodeinu b'sefer ha'chaim, L'ma'alcha Elohim Chaim, Melech Ozer Mashiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah.
page 170.
Atah Gibor Elam Adonai, V'nechayei Hakol Torah Le'Mashiach, Mori Atah. Mechokel Chaim V'Chesed, Mechayei Hakol V'Rachamim Rabim, Zorech Noflim V'Rofeh Cholim, Umatzir Asurim, Umekayem Emunasel, Mishenei Alfahar, Michan Mochad Geburos, Umito Melah. Melech to Mechayeh, U'Mashiach Yeshua, Mi'Chavucha El Barachamim, Sefer Yeturah, L'Chaim V'Rachamim, Ne'eman Atah L'Chayot Hakol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh Hakol.
You can be seated now. Turn to page 173 and read together at the top of the page a short paragraph by one of my teachers of blessed memory. I imagine it's fully possible to teach it to others in this room as well. Our actions help us live in such a way that when we suffer life's darkest depredations, we will always have ways of coping with them. Our actions may not change the ultimate outcome one iota, but they alter our attitude, bolster our ability to withstand challenges, help us handle unavoidable misfortunes better, and see life's value in the chaos of this next way. Untitled Chapter is the name of this prayer that embodies so much of what people associate with the High Holy Days. It is on page 174, and moving forward. Untitled Chapter, Kihu Nora Ve'ayom. Let us proclaim the power of this day. We can read this together in the middle paragraph. A day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love. Your reign is a reign of truth. And we'll continue. In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal. You record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. When you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself. For every human hand leaves its mark, ignorant of the other. We'll read these next two paragraphs on 176, and then we'll pause and talk about how we will sing and continue from there. And so a great shofar will cry, Kiah, the still small voice will be heard. Angels in a world of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into the world will pass before you, like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, and you inscribe judgments. Now on page 178, we have this litany, this list of who shall live and who shall die, and two lines at the top with the melody. So we'll sing the melody, then we'll read some of the English, and we'll punctuate the English with it. The Rosh Hashanah, Yikatehun, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Yichatehun. The Rosh Hashanah, Yikatehun, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Yichatehun. Continue in English. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by peace? Sing together. The Rosh Hashanah, Yikatehun, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Yichatehun. The Rosh Hashanah, Yikatehun, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Yichatehun. Who by famine, who by death, who by earthquake, and who by plague, who by strangling, and who by stoning, who will rest and who will wander, who will be tranquil and who will be troubled, who will be calm and who tormented, who will live in poverty and who in prosperity, who will be humble and who will sing once more. The Rosh Hashanah, Yikatehun, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Yichatehun. The Rosh Hashanah, Yikatehun, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Uvayom Sam Kippur, Yichatehun. 180. With Teshuvah, Utefillah, Utsadaka, Ma'avirin, as Roa Hagdazera. That we return to the right path with prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. You cannot negate the decree, of course, right? Life happens, but these three, this sort of Rosh Hashanah Trinity, for lack of a better term, Teshuvah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, these are the types of actions that were described in the reading from Rabbi Pinkin. These are ways that we can assert our agency, our freedom, our autonomy, and that we can assume some responsibility for our circumstances and for the world around us. So there's an entire roadmap, I think, for a meaningful Jewish life here. A lot of folks get bogged down. There's so many things you're supposed to do. I don't know how. Do you light it first or say the blessing? Do you eat this? Do you do that? What's the blah, 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 blah? At the end of the day, it's not a simple path, but it's not as complicated as we often perceive it to be. I think that sense of it being so complicated is really just a way of deflecting from the word. Teshuvah, trying to be the best of it. Tefillah, looking inward and trying to really see things as they are inside of us and in the world around us. Tzedakah, doing something about it, not accepting the fact that the world has to be the way that it is, but that we, through small actions like charitable giving or through larger actions, maybe even dedicating our entire lives, we can make the world better. So to me, this is the essence of Judaism here, along with that kind of open-eyed acknowledgement. Doesn't mean that, God forbid, we won't get COVID, we won't experience pain, difficulty, hardship, we won't have moments where we feel like life is absurd, we won't feel like moments where we did everything right and didn't get any kind of acknowledgement in return. But again, these three, I think, really, therein kind of lies our autonomy, our freedom, and a sense of empowerment in the face of a world that, as I think, can often be overwhelming. Okay. We will turn now to page 196. This is just a blessing for the new year for all of us. I think, I don't know about you, but it's wonderful to receive a blessing. It's wonderful to give a blessing. It turns out that giving and receiving blessings are pretty much the same thing, right? When we are in the existential universe of blessing, we're reminded that life has the potential to be sweet, that life is meaningful, that we're connected to one another, that there's something bigger going on around us, maybe a feeling of being held in the arms of something meaningful and purposeful, or simply just acknowledging that love is probably the ultimate reality, and that we're all invited to participate and to magnify. So let's bless one another. I'll read a little bit of Hebrew. You're welcome to read it with me, just because it's Rosh Hashanah, and even if we don't know exactly what it means, our ears are trained, at least in a spiritual sense, to resonate with Hebrew words. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu ya'aleh ve'yavo ve'yagia ve'yira'eh ve'yiratzeh ve'yishama ve'yipaked ve'yizacher zichronenu ufitdonenu ve'zichron avotenu ve'imotenu v'zichron Yerushalayim ir kodechecha v'zichron kol amcha beit Yisrael lefanecha v'frita v'tova v'chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom v'yom v'zikaron hazeh. Let's read together. Our God, God of the generations before us, may the memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness, together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of the sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel. May we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of our remembrance. There's some amens coming up. Zochrenu Adonai Eloheinu bo letovah. Amen. Uchotenu vo livracha. Amen. U'she'enu vo lechaim. Amen. Eternal our God, remember us. Amen. Be mindful of us. Amen. And redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing. Amen. In a moment, we will sing a prayer for peace, but we're actually going to turn our attention to the shofar now. Raise your hand if you love the shofar. Okay. I'm very sorry. It's going to be somewhat disappointing under the best of circumstances. I'm a sub-average shofar blower. It's not as bad as if I were to try to sing to you Kol Nidre, but it's not. The shofar is being very pious today. It's wearing a yarmulke. It has a name tag on it, so the shofar is either named Caleb or it belongs to my son. This is basically in COVID, this thing is like a dangerous. The shofar is always dangerous because if we actually take the sound of the shofar seriously, we're going to be transformed, right? I think on some level. But it's literally dangerous right now just because of aerosols and particles and all of that. I tried to warm this thing up earlier. I had a few good toots, a few very bad ones. I'm sure this will be atrocious. I think that I'm going to blame this thing, which I think obviously obstructs the airflow. On Rosh Rosh Hashanah, shofar is sounded and kind of thematically. So there are themes called Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. And each one is kind of meant to give us a different kavanah, a different meditation or focus. The first of the themes is called Malchuyot. It's really about considering seriously the possibility that God created the world and that God, in addition to being the creator, that God is the organizing principle of the world. In the imagination of the Jewish people from back in the day, that meant that God was some sort of king or sovereign. I'm not sure, how that rings in our ears now, but I come back to this idea of a purposeful universe, of a universe that is set up according to certain rules. And while many kings have not done the best job sort of presiding and ruling over their people, I think a true king, a true sovereign really wants all the citizens, all the inhabitants to just flourish and to thrive. And so as I hear the sound of the shofar, it's really a call to understand the world as it is, however we understand it, and to consider the possibility that there is some organizing principle out there that wants us to thrive and to flourish individually and together. Does that make sense? And I'm not going to do all the shofar calls because I've already told you I'm not great at it, and because of this, if you're extremely disappointed, I also push it back on us. There was definitely a call for some wonderful member of the Emory community to take this responsibility off of my hands, but it's a bit of a tricky year. So, page 206 is where we find ourselves. There are these two blessings that we'll say the first time we sound the shofar. Baruch, we say together, Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher tishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishma kol shofar. And Shehechianu Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'kiyamanu l'zman ha'azeh. Add to the list of liabilities the fact that I took Sudafed this morning, so I was a little congested, very dry. Have I provided enough disclaimers for this? This is the lower half of my face. I know it is gorgeous. Okay. It's customary to stand for the shofar. I feel like I'm having to stand up for what will potentially be extremely anticlimactic. And if I don't get it right the first time, bear with me, we'll get some sound out of this ranch. Okay. It's Kia. I can do that again. Good enough for now. Okay, we can be. Thanks for doing that with me, everyone. It would not be Rosh Hashanah without the shofar. And Rabbi Browning may teach us in a little while, but Rosh Hashanah, it's all about the shofar. Apples and honey are a wonderful gateway drug to Rosh Hashanah, but the heart and soul of Rosh Hashanah really is the shofar. Page 207. We won't read these prayers each time, but we'll read them now. Prayers that kind of follow the sounding of the shofar. Let's read in the middle in the English. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. And we'll continue. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desires, be pleasing before you, God our God. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware, and call out, ye up, lovingly and favorably receive our prayers and all communities. Just call attention to this one Jewish theme of B'Tselem Elohim, that we are created with a little spark of the divine inside of us. And so sometimes when I hear God referred to, or us asking God to be knowing, attentive, watchful, and aware, those are reminders that we're supposed to be that way as well. We're supposed to, to know things about life, about ourselves, about one another. We're supposed to be attentive, right? To be present. One of the greatest gifts we can give to another person is our attention. And when we give it generously, other people know and experience that. To be watchful, to be paying attention, to be vigilant, to be socially conscious, and to be aware, to be awake. And so if we ask those things of God, we have to also ask them of ourselves. Okay, and now a prayer for peace on page 216. Hannah, do you have one in mind?
Shalom Tova Uvracha. Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha. Chesed verachamim. Chesed verachamim. Verachamim. Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha. Aleinu v'kol Yisrael Amecha. Aleinu v'kol Yisrael Amecha. Amecha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sing Shalom Tova Uvracha.
Thank you for learning that one. It really is, I think, beautiful and so fitting for this moment. We're about to just take a brief moment for silent prayer. I want to just give us something to consider if we are still adrift. The next line of this Shalom prayer, Bartenu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad. Bless us, our Father, our parent, as if we were one. And so sometimes when it comes to silent prayer, think about, what is the prayer of my heart? What's the prayer for me, for my family, for my loved ones? But I wonder if any of us wanted to take up the challenge, a prayer that we would offer not only ourselves, but that we could offer unequivocally to all creation. Right? That's the invitation here, is to kulanu ke'echad, to a blessing from God that is for everyone. People that we like, people that we love, people that we don't like, people that we respect, people that we don't respect, people with whom we disagree. All creation, even, is there some prayer that we can heartfelt and genuinely offer indiscriminately, really for the whole world, and if so, what might that be? So we'll just take a few moments, reflect silently, and then resume our worship together. Continue on page 220. Don't want to give you the wrong page. Page 223, where we find the word to Avinu Malkeinu. This prayer appears in all the services during the High Holy Days. The words shift to kind of reflect the specifics of the moment. So we'll read just these series of blessings in Hebrew and English, and then we'll sing the refrain together at the end. Since we have our ark today, for those who were here last night, you saw it wheeled by in a very dramatic moment of the pathway. We now know why the ark has wheels. And so now it's here, so we can rise and we can open the ark and kind of call attention to a little bit more of the dramatic nature of this moment. Please rise. You You are welcome to join me in reading English, Hebrew, whatever you wish. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, Atanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, give straight and sin before you. Avinu Malkeinu, Hamol Aleinu, Ve'al Olamenu, Ve'tatinu. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our enemies. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Dever, Bechera, Bera'a, Me'alenu. Avinu Malkeinu, all the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Kotsar, Umastin, Me'alenu. Avinu Malkeinu, all the rain of those Mastin and terror. Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu, Besefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of life well lived. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, renew us with your goodness. Avinu Malkeinu, Ronenu, in Banu Masim, say Imanu, Tzedakah Lachesed, Roshi. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, answer us praise for either one. Save us for acts of justice and love. Torah service, like everything else in the world today, will look a little bit differently. We'll take the Torah out, we won't process it through the congregation, we'll put it to the table, we'll do our reading, and we'll kind of go from there. In Kamocha Elohim Adonai ve'in Kemaseh Malchut Malchut Olamim U'meheshaltecha Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimod Le'olam Adonai Oseh Yitzim, Adonai Yivarech Adamu V'Shalom, Aparachamim, Etiva V'Tzoncha, Etzion, Ivnei Omot, Yerushalayim, Ivnei Omot, Yerushalayim, Ivecha Levadatanu, Melech Elram V'Nisan, Adonai. Turn to page 228. We'll say a few prayers with the Torah in our midst. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum, V'Chanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rod Chesed, V'Emet, Notzer Chesed, V'Alafim, V'Se'avon, V'Fesha, V'Chata'ah, V'Nakeh. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh V'Norah Shemo. Gadolu Adonai Yitzid, U'Neramimah, Shehemo Yachdav, V'Echad Adonai HaGedula, HaGevura, Tiferet, V'Hanetzach V'Hahod, Ki Chov HaShamayim U'Ha'aretz, Ki Chov HaShamayim V'Ha'aretz, Lecha Adonai HaMamlacha, V'Hamidah Seh L'Chol L'Rosh. We can be seated. So, there are two choices that our Matzor provides us for the High Holy Day Torah reading. The first is a traditional, actually second-day Rosh Hashanah reading in many communities, which is the story of Akedat Yitzhak, the binding of Isaac. That's the one that we'll read today. The other is the very beginning of the Torah, Bereshit, the story of creation, as a reminder that today is the day that the world was created. Both have themes that connect to Rosh Hashanah and the High Holy Days, and both present different opportunities and challenges for us to consider. I just want to invite us all, though, on this Rosh Hashanah to try to hold a little piece of each of those Torah readings in our hearts and in our minds. I think the one that we're not reading, the story of creation, is just a reminder of the fact that we are a part of the natural world and that we are happiest and most likely to flourish when we remember that and when we align ourselves with and participate in and make positive contributions to the world around us. And then the binding of Isaac, we'll see what kind of meaning arises for us as we hear some of the words read aloud. But before this, we've never done this here at Marcus Hillel, at least for the High Holy Days that I know of. But I'd love for us to turn to page 233, where we see a special prayer called Birkat HaGomel. I have a feeling that many synagogues are reciting this prayer this year because this is, in fact, a prayer sharing thankfulness, a prayer that a person says after enduring and surviving some sort of hardship. So if we look at page 232, a teaching of our sages in the presence of the sacred scroll, we give thanks for the blessings in our lives. Rav Judah said in the name of Rav, who should offer thanksgiving? Those who have completed an arduous voyage, those who have recovered from an illness or injury, and prisoners who have been set free. In the midst of the congregation, we honor those who have come through times of challenge, difficulty, or danger. Today we celebrate our survival. Today we give thanks for the resilience of the body, for the strength of the human spirit, for the precious gift of life, experienced with new intensity when life has been at risk. So we won't ask for anyone to share, but any of us been on an arduous voyage in the last, I don't know, since last Rosh Hashanah? You know, whatever that might look like. This was referring typically to a sea voyage, crossing the Mediterranean, I don't know, to get some olive oil from Greece or something like that, but an arduous voyage, any of us experienced an illness or an injury or known someone who has, and any of us feel that there have been moments where we felt in some way imprisoned and or experienced some sense of freedom or release from those circumstances. And so I think that these categories are broad enough, I would presume, to include us all. And so I think that this prayer also is just meant to call our attention to the fact that daily living is hard stuff, and that we all pretty much on a daily basis undertake something that's pretty heroic and pretty extraordinary. Obviously, it's a lot of fun, and there's ice cream, and there's plenty of good things that come our way. But it's all against the backdrop of real struggle. To live each day under any circumstances, let alone the circumstances in which we found ourselves, requires something of us. And so that may again be that little spark of the divine inside of us, which gives us the strength and the resilience and the fortitude to endure whatever our circumstances are. However we relate to it, let's just take a moment to express gratitude using this traditional language. On page 233, we'll just say where it says individual praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hagomel l'chayamim tovot shigamamani kol tov. Blessed are you, our God eternal. Your majesty fills the universe. Through your generosity, I have experienced your goodness. Amen. There is a custom here of having group aliot. So Hannah and I were talking through this, and we came up with what we thought were some broad categories. So I'll just tell you all of them, so that way you can decide if and how you want to participate. So none of us obviously know what the future holds, but the first aliyah would be for anyone who anticipates that this may be their last High Holy Days here at Marcus Hillel Center for a while. Maybe you're a senior, maybe, I don't know, maybe you have no idea what you're doing here and you're never coming back. Maybe you're, who knows? But if you come back next year, we're not going to say, wait a minute, you came up for that tour, so get out of here. But if there's a reasonable chance. The second one, just go through them all. If it's your first time here, that's a little bit more black and white. You're brand new here, way to jump right in. We will help you, we will hold your hand, but we definitely want to acknowledge that for some of us, this is something new. Then our third aliyah will be we thought anyone who has volunteered or worked to provide COVID support or relief, contact tracing, medical assistance, volunteering at a vaccine clinic, providing a meal for a friend or someone in our community who was, had to quarantine, whatever that might look like, just acknowledging that many of us have helped provide some of that much needed support and relief during these challenging times. So typically we would come up here, but I think we'll just let people stay where they are. Is there anyone who falls into that first category, that it's possible that this may be your final, at least for a little while, time at Marcus Hill? Great. So we will join. You want us to join you, or you want to do it by anybody else? Hannah will do. Okay. So let's find the blessing, which is on page.
I think it's 230.
Is it on page 230? Yes, it's on page 230. Okay.
Baruch.
You guys can do it together. 1, 2, 3.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Find the reading here. A moment. This yod has been passed down from generation to generation, just like the one that is missing. Let's see. The world's biggest Torah. Vayhi achar hadavarima ele Elohim nisa et Abraham. Vayomer elav Abraham. Vayomer hineni. Vayomer kachna et bincha et yechidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak v'lech lecha el eretz u'moriah v'alehu sham le'olav halachad kaharim asher amar elecha. Vayishkem Abraham b'boker v'yachavosh et chamorah v'yikach et shnei na'arav yitov et Yitzchak beno v'yivaka atzei olav v'yakum v'yelech el hamakom asher amar lo ha'elohim. So we have our story set up there. For those who are following along in English, we just read verses 1, 2, and 3. And if you always do the blessing after the Torah reading, which is back on page 230, I believe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natav b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Anybody who's here for the first time? Okay, here we got a couple people. Matthew, I know you know. Yeah, let's stand up. Why not? That's the next thing to do. All right, strength in numbers. Wow, so okay. It's always like this. We always wear masks. We always chauffeur always has the Amidah. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Baruch Hu Adonai. Congregation response. Baruch Adonai. We continue. Baruch Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. And I'm just noticing they put that last sentence down there in the middle just to confuse us. For those that are wondering, I do know that the Torah is often chanted. So I appreciate everyone understanding that we had a lot of different factors to take into consideration. We are on verse 4. Vayom hashlishi vayisa Abraham et einav vayar et hamakom merachok. Vayomer Abraham el na'arav shvu lechem bo im hachamor ve'ani v'hana'ar nocha ad ko v'nishtachaveh v'nashuva alecha. Vayikach Abraham et atzei ha'olav vayasem al Yitzchak beno vayikach b'yedeh האש ואת המאכלת ויקחו שניכם יחדיו. And we will pause here. Y'all did such a great job. If you don't mind standing back up and doing the blessing after the Torah reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natav b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. And welcome. We hope that you feel at home here and that whatever amount of time you spend being a part of the Hillel and the Emory Hillel or Georgia Hillels Church community is a time of blessing. It's something that is an important part of your journey during this time. Okay. So, volunteered or worked to provide COVID support relief, contact tracing, medical assistance, volunteering at a vaccine clinic, et cetera, et cetera. Does anyone fall into this category? You've provided a meal, you've taken care of a friend, you've done something, thought you're a pulmonologist, I don't know, something along those lines. And we look to you to remind us all of the agency that we maintain during these times. Okay, back on page 230, I'll say it with you. Baruch Hu et Adonai Habarach. Baruch Adonai Habarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu torto. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham Aviv, Vayomer Aviv, Vayomer Hineni Beni, Vayomer Hine Ha'esh, Ha'etzim, Va'ayeh Haseh Le'olah. Vayomer Avraham, Elohim Yir'eh Lo Haseh Le'olah Beni, Ve'elchu Shnechem Yachdav. Vayivohu el Hamakom Asher Amar Lo Ha'elohim, Vayiven Sham Avraham et HaMizbeach, Ve'aroch et Ha'etzim, Ve'yakod et Yitzchak Beno, Vayasem Oto al HaMizbeach, Mima'al La'etzim, Vayishlach Avraham et Yedo, Vayikach et Ha'machelet L'shchot et Beno, Vayikra Elav Malach Adonai min Hashemayim, Vayomer Avraham, Avraham, Vayomer Hineni, Vayomer Al Tishlach Yecha El Hanahar, Ve'al Ta'as Lo Me'umah, Ki Ata Yadati, Ki Yirei Elohim Ata, Ve'lo Chashafta et Bincha et Yichidcha Mimeni. And we will stop our story there, knowing that Isaac has been spared. Let's see the blessing after, and then maybe we'll just have an observation or two about the story and what it might mean for us in the world right now. So back on page 230, we'll do the blessing after the Torah reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu et v'chayei olam natzar b'tzadkenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. So it seems to me, as I was thinking about this story, that there are really two. I think this is an incredibly well-crafted story. I think this is an example of the literary genius of the Torah for those who are into that sort of thing. There's a certain economy of words. There's a certain flow to the narrative. There's a really wonderful use of verbs and grammar and syntax. It seems to me that there are really two things that stand out to me this year, and if as I'm sharing you have thoughts as well, I would definitely welcome them. One is this recurring phrase of Vayelchu Shnechem Yachdav. It says repeated times, the two of them journeyed on together. And so I think that, in the world that we're living in, this reminder of the fact that we are journeying together, that we're interconnected, that what affects one of us affects all of us, I think, is something that is a little bit of my imposing on this text. Obviously, that's really not what, why that phrase is used here, but, we are in this together, and that sense of both the unavoidable solidarity that we feel and the fact that it seems like so many people don't recognize that interdependence and that need for mutual respect at all is something that I find to be just kind of crying out to me from the text. And then the other thing is just this really, taking a step back, the fact that, I think Abraham was not really ever expecting to seriously be asked to sacrifice his child. But at the same time in this story, there's no way that Isaac emerges from this experience untraumatized. And as an educator, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I'm both heartbroken and outraged at the disregard that we seem to have in our society for our children. The fact that education was last on the agenda, in so many places, including right here at home, that bars and gyms and concerts and sporting events took priority over educating our kids, I think is something that is just really heartbreaking to me. I mean, I think we learn a lot about a society by the way we treat our children, by the way that we treat our elders, And I think for the most part, COVID has demonstrated, I think, really systemic and avoidable failures in both areas. And so, reading this, I just think about Isaac, and I think about all the kids who are experiencing forms of trauma, both kind of subtle and very acute in light of recent circumstances, and my prayers and my desire to make things better for them. So I don't know if anybody else has anything on the story, just sort of these unique and peculiar circumstances. The story has not changed in quite some time, but our circumstances have. There's always more to be said, and with that in mind, I want to ask, I'm just looking at my outline, we'll have some speakers coming up soon, but is Olivia here? Okay. Olivia, I have a sense that she might not have been able to make it, so we will not be hearing from Olivia, I don't think, this morning. Hannah, can we do a Misha Barrow prayer while we're thinking about COVID and healing and all of those things, and with our Taurus we'll have. For someone whose name you want to share out loud and you want to send a healing prayer to them, I think we can send healing prayers over to the Emory Conference Center. My understanding is that that has been set up as a place for members of the Emory community to quarantine. I'm sure there are many who, even if they have ambivalent feelings about attending synagogue, would much rather be here with us than over there. So that is affected by COVID, and of course other things going on. Are there any names or any other notes that we want to put?
Jonathan Robertson,
Jonathan Roberts.
Sharon Golden,
For the names that are shared aloud, and those that were whispered, and those that are in our hearts. We're on page 245. Page 240, yeah, 45 at the bottom half of the page. The source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Those in need of healing with refuah Shema, the renewal of bodies, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And on page 200, that's not the right page, give me a minute. So we're not going to find the page, let's rise as we return to the ark. You can be seated. And I'm so happy to turn it over to my friend and colleague, our teacher, Rabbi Jordan Bronick. If you don't know Rabbi Bronick, he's a Jewish chaplain here at Emory, and you'll be happy to meet him. So now to about Jordan.
It's so nice to be here. I would usually just start with a deep breath in and out, but in a KN95, it's can't really do that as much. It doesn't feel so great, but I'm really honored to be here, and it's wonderful to have Rabbi Lapidus leading here. My first job out of college was at the Hillel at Yale University at the Slipka Center, and I took over for Rabbi Lapidus, who was 23 or 24 at the time, and I was 22, and my first professional job was to be the new Micah. And so it's very nice to get to be in Atlanta and cross paths again and be like, oh yeah, the first thing I ever did was being the new you. So, and Hannah, thank you for leading the singing today. It has been lovely to be here, and I'm so happy to look around and see all of you. And we don't have half of our faces showing, but I can look and see your eyes and just say welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I have a distinct memory from maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think my boys were maybe 6 and 4 and 2. It was a sunny day. The grass was warm and lush and inviting. And whatever activity we'd been up to, it had devolved into wrestling and pure silliness. And at some point I had 2 kids sitting on my chest and tickling me, and the third was running around laughing hysterically and throwing grass on me. And I remember that a stranger passed by and he said to me, enjoy these times, they don't last long enough. And I think in the moment I smiled and I was like, oh thanks, and then I just got back into it. But talking about this encounter later on with Casey, I was like, why did you tell me to enjoy the times? Wasn't I clearly enjoying them? I know what he means because we get these messages all the time about the fleeting nature of time, how in the blink of an eye it's gone. But it wasn't like I was staring at my phone or reading the paper. I was literally in the middle of it. I was in a human pile of joy. And we all get these messages, and I assume that a lot of you get them too in your college years. Phrases like, oh, these will be the best 4 years of your life, or for those of you who stood up in your first year here, you get told, oh, you'll be a senior before you know it. And I get it. Time is slippery. It can get away from us. But instead of generally just telling us to make the most of time, it would be helpful if people would give us some idea of how to do that. And I'm thinking that maybe if we mine the traditions of Rosh Hashanah, we can come up with a few best practices that will guide us into that process. And we can begin just with the cycle of Jewish time. Last week we began not just a new year, but a new month, the month of Tishrei. And the empty sky served as a symbol of arrival and renewal. The new moon isn't visible in the night sky, but even its absence marks the cosmic cycle that has fascinated humanity for millennia. In the Mishnah, which is our most ancient thread of the oral Torah, the arrival of the new month or new year began a whole pyrotechnic messaging system. A fire was lit on the mountains of Jerusalem, and when from the next mountaintop that fire was spotted, the people would light their own. And when this fire was seen from the next mountain, they too would light a fire, and on the light would spread across swaths of land and across boundaries. All of this entire intricate web of communication, so that people would know what day it is. Now we have a phone in our pocket or watch on our wrist. We don't need to wait for fire on a mountain. And still, it's easy to forget what day it is. Is it Tuesday? We say a lot of times, oh, it's Friday again? It happened fast. All the more so during COVID when days are just impossible to distinguish from one another. In some ways, this is the biggest gift of traveling through the Jewish calendar. We're reminded every Shabbat of the small cycles of creation. The holidays mark times of planting and harvesting, the solstices, the annual journey through the books of the Torah. All of this scaffolding, this entire calendar, is built up to remind us of time, to help us remember it. Look at all of you who are here, whether you're sitting here in person or you're online. You stopped today to say, it's 5782. I want to acknowledge it. I want to pray that it brings more blessing and more healing for a broken world. The second symbol of Rosh Hashanah that might inspire us to make the most of time is the sound of the shofar. In the Slichot services, which are traditionally recited in the early mornings in the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah, we say, Ben Adam, Malacha Nirdam. Human, why are you sleeping? Wake up and give some praise. At times it can feel like we are all sleepwalking, just going through the motions. The beginning of a semester is so challenging because we haven't yet established our routines. But no sooner have we established them than the weeks start to get away from us. The shofar is our wake-up call, a reminder to cultivate attention and intention. In recent years, I've been moved by the teaching of a rabbi whose name was Isaiah Horowitz, a pre-modern Talmudist and sage, who taught that the calls of the shofar are like our inward journey of tshuva, of return. Though the sound of tekiah is whole, shvarim is a three-part blast, and truah is an utterly broken sound, a sound that can represent our own shattered places. I share this because there is so much pressure to have an amazing time in college. It can all feel like a bit too much. What happens if in the midst of the best 4 years of your life, you experience loneliness or heartbreak? What happens when friendships crumble? When you experience illness or chronic pain? What happens when the trajectory of our life changes and we have to confront disappointment? The shofar is a reminder that knowing our places of imperfection is essential to feeling whole. If you want to be present, if you want to make the most of time, then know that there will be brokenness and that you can carry it with you. The final lesson of Rosh Hashanah that Rosh Hashanah can teach us about savoring time is tied up in the story of the Akedah. I'm glad you chose that story. The story of the binding of Isaac. I don't want to focus on the trauma of near child sacrifice or whether Abraham passed or failed the test or Kierkegaard or leaps of faith. Instead, I want to draw our attention to the role that vision plays in the story. The Hebrew root Resh Aleph He, which means to see or behold, is something of a light word in the story. It's a great German word. It means a key word in the story. Multiple times, we as readers are given the sense that the story of Abraham's ordeal is about both what we see and about what we are unable to see. And it all comes, as Rabbi Lapidus read beautifully, to this dramatic climax when Abraham raises the knife and the angel calls out, Abraham, Abraham, and he answers, Hineni, here I am. Only in that moment does he look up and see a ram whose horns are caught in the thicket. My teacher, Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld, once taught about this story by way of a poem. She wrote, "It was there all along, waiting for us to open our eyes, waiting for us to see another way. It's not just our stubbornness that blinds us. Sometimes it's the commanding voice of faith. Sometimes it's the commanding voice of despair. And sometimes it's the thicket itself, the thorny, tangled overgrowth of our lives. It's not that we're blind. We're just busy, schlepping the wood, tending the fire, building the altar, trying to quiet the children, trying to answer their questions, even though God knows we can't answer our own." In the busyness of our lives, it's possible that each of us is forgetting to look up, forgetting to see what's just before our eyes. We are schlepping the wood. We are tending the fire. Maybe we're focusing on friends or on the impossible academic demands. It can feel in moments like it's impossible to raise our eyes, but without doing so, we will miss what's right before us. This vision, this attention, and seeing is a way of making sure that time doesn't get away. This is the trick we are meant to learn from this strange and challenging story. So, the next time someone asks us to enjoy these moments, to make the most of them, I hope that we will all answer, yeah, we've got it. Rosh Hashanah teaches us to pay attention to the cycles of the year, to anchor ourselves in the contours of Jewish time. The sound of the shofar teaches us to wake up, to see our wholeness and our cracks, to not wait for ourselves to be perfect. We won't be. And finally, it teaches us to remember to look up, to see the blessings that are around us. We are in the thicket, and we are in the thick of it. These have been hard times, and we have sometimes wished for time to just speed up so we can get through it. Let's look up to acknowledge what is here. May the Holy One of Blessing grant us patience and self-compassion and the vision to navigate the year ahead. May it be a time of prosperity, of good health, and of peace. And let us say, Amen. Shana Tova.
Come a long way from Amidah.
Yeah.
But not so far. Okay. That was really lovely. I know I'm not the only person who found that to be very meaningful. And also, but I'm probably the only person who thought, hey, both of the remaining shofar calls, the themes were embedded in what Rabbi Veronica just shared with us. So we're going to sound the shofar here. The theme is Zichronot, that of memory, God remembering us. But I think for our purposes, at least for my purposes, what are the things that we need to remember? What are the things that we know but have forgotten, or that we knew but have forgotten? What are the things that we can just remember and recommit ourselves to in this moment and in the days to come? We're on page 262, and for those that are hungry for lunch, we are so close to that moment. So I told you page 262, but you actually don't need to go there because we just summarized it. Let's rise and hear the sound, hopefully the sound of the shofar. Or the sound of someone who should have started with the shofar professionally. Kia. Okay. Be seated for a couple more minutes. Traditionally here we'd offer a prayer for our country, we'd offer a prayer for the state of Israel. These things are scripted in our High Holiday Machzor, but those scripts don't feel relevant because we're living in a different time and in a different place. I thought that we could just try together, even if it's just 2 or 3 sentences, to construct a prayer for our country, the United States, and also a prayer for the state of Israel. I don't know if anybody is willing to offer a sentence. I mean, what do you want? What's your hope for this country in the days and in the year to come? Doesn't have to be comprehensive. Just something. Yeah.
A redemption.
A redemption. So we pray for redemption here at home. Anything else that we could add to that?
I feel like never stop fighting to get closer to equality.
Awesome. So I hope everyone heard that. To never stop fighting to get closer to equality. Anything else that we can add to redemption, to the fight for equality?
I heard people saying togetherness, a sense of being united.
Yeah. It's so sad to think that the person next to me, we have so much in common, so many blessings, and that we might still, and that there might be this really absurd wedge in between us, and the repercussions of that. Anything else that we can add?
Achieving herd immunity.
What's that?
Achieving herd immunity to COVID.
Achieving herd immunity, God willing. Good, these prayers should be aspirational.
Maybe that we see the past honestly so we can move forward. Like,
Israel? Do we have any prayers, any hopes, any challenges perhaps that we would want to extend to our Jewish home? I would certainly pray for leaders who have the wisdom to make some progress in really what is just one of the most heartbreaking and complex sort of geopolitical crises that the world has ever known. It requires some bold and some creative and some different type of leadership that I don't know who that person or who those people are.
That people see the value of Israel surviving as a nation.
Yes, absolutely. Right, I sometimes say when people say, oh, we're going to boycott Israel, I say, give me your phone, give me your antibiotics, give me this, but there's so much more to it than that, right? What Israel could be, not just for Jews, and not just for the citizens of Israel, but for the world. Anything else?
I think similarly to what Rabbi Veronik said about America, that Israel can also reconcile with its past to hopefully bring about justice.
Yeah, I'm hearing people say, please, everything.
Good. I'm glad that we did that. Okay. We'll do the shofar one more time. I'll let you all be seated because it's not that exciting, but the theme here is hope. And so we are a hopeful people at the end of the day. You know, sometimes it feels like our hope is perhaps more elusive than at other times, but at the end of the day, I think to be a part of the extended Jewish family is to be hopeful, and to believe in the possibility of a better world, not just in some distant future time, but now and now and now. So we'll do a Tkiyah. Maybe it'll be a Tkiyah. Get a law of Caleb here allows it to be. Guess I can't do that with this. Tkiyah. Hold on, I'll give you something at least a little better sound. Okay, thank you, Dizzy Gillespie. All right. We are at Mourner's Kaddish, then we'll say a concluding blessing. Hannah will lead us in the closing song, and we'll wish one another Shana Tova. So if you are thinking of someone, maybe it's that person that you invited to stand beside you all those hours ago, or someone who you're remembering this Rosh Hashanah and you want to share their name out loud. We'll just go this section first, and then see all over there. Does anyone have a name that they want to share? Any name? Let's rise and join together. Page 292. Yitkadal, V'yitkadal, Shemera, Ve'alma, Tivrach, Hirute, Family, Malgute, V'chayethon, V'yamethon, V'chayed, Kol Beit Yisrael, V'galav, V'zman Karev, V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba, V'vorach, V'elam, V'amei Amaya, Yitvarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitvar, V'yitvam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shmei Pirsha, V'rechu, V'ela, V'yipol, Birchata, V'shirata, V'yishvachata, V'nechemata, Da'amim, Rami, Alma, V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shlama, Rabba, V'yishemaya, V'chayim, V'leinu, V'kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Say Shalom, V'imru, V'yah, say Shalom, Aleinu, V'kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Turn to page 294, blessing for the new year. Hayom te'amsenu, Amen. Let's read together. Strengthen us on this day. Amen. Hayom tivarchenu. Amen. Bless us today. Amen. Hayom tigadlenu. Amen. Lift up our lives on this day. Amen. Hayom tidrashenu l'tova. Amen. Grant us goodness today. Amen. Hayom tichtevenu l'chayim tovim. Amen. Inscribe us for a good life on this day. Amen. Hayom tishma shavatenu. Amen. Hear our heartfelt words today. Amen. Hayom tikabel barachamim uvratzon et tefilatenu. Amen. On this day, receive our prayers with love. Amen. Hayom Tzidmechenu v'Yimin Tzidkecha. Amen. Fortify our best intentions, and we go forth today to do your righteous work. Amen. Let's remain standing for just a moment. Today at 5 p.m., meeting at the entrance to Lowwater with Rabbi Ilan, Rabbi Jordan Tashlich, which is a wonderful ritual, beautiful to be outdoors. Shabbat this Friday, please RSVP for Thursday at noon on the Hive. I'm assuming people know what that is. RSVP for Yom Kippur by Monday at 3 p.m. And there will be some learning opportunities with rabbinic intern Alan Lipson, who I've met and is lovely and fascinating and will be here. And I would definitely seek him out Saturday at lunchtime and on Yom Kippur after Kol Nidre. So those are our announcements. And we'll hear the concluding song, and that will represent the end of our morning together.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. You feel free to be seated. We're going to close with the words that we just prayed of Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom Birova, Oseh Shalom Aleinu. Oseh Shalom Birova, Oseh Shalom Aleinu. Oseh Shalom Birova, Oseh Shalom Aleinu. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom Biroma, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. Oseh Shalom Biroma, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. Oseh Shalom Biroma, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Shana L'Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova, which means that it's been a meaningful and valuable and joyful season for us all. Tashlich at 5 o'clock, and Shana Tova.